Hey Magic fans, welcome back. This is your captain speaking. We're here today with my little buddy here. You can see my little cat friend Prince is here to help us with the draft overview for those of you looking to go start drafting this weekend of the new D&D. I'd like to give you my rundown of what I've learned so far from drafting sealed and limited play in general with the new set. So, with that said, put your tray tables and seat backs in a full upright position and let me take you on a ride to let you know what the best cards are in each color and what color cards are good with the other colors that they're actually in. I know it makes no sense. Don't worry, I'll get to it here in a minute. So, as we get started, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that we can support the channel. Put some comments down below, tell me your thoughts, and let me know if I'm just full of crap or not. But anyway, so moving right along. Here we have the Grand Master of Flowers. So I'm going to start from the top with the Mythics and run down because it'll be real quick to go through the Mythics because both the Mythics and Rares are just bombs. Very few of them are not. So obviously if you get a Grand Master of Flowers, you should be playing this bad boy. He is a beast. The only drawback is you have to be able to protect him. There's lots of ways to deal with the Planeswalkers, especially in black. So please just be careful if you do play him. He will not be the end-all, beat-all, especially if you don't have a monk to go get. Because if you don't, he's probably just going to die. So really think about that when you build these decks. But if you're drafting, he's definitely a first pick because he's worth a little bit of cash too. Not only is he that good. So moving right along, we have Ice Fang the Frost Tyrant. This bad boy is a beater. I don't know how much this card is worth off the top of my head. I think it's only like $2 or $3. But if you're going to play white, this is what you want. 4 mana for a 4/3 flying vigilance that becomes an equipment. Nothing more needs to be said. This thing is just a beast. You can draft it in any color that white supports, or use it as a white supporting card in a different color. Moving on, we have the Book of Exalted Deeds. Now, you guys have heard a lot of stuff about the book being banned prematurely in Arena due to some of the shenanigans that can be pulled off with it. A lot of people think this book's no good in Sealed. I'm here to tell you this book's amazing in Sealed and in Draft. Now, the catch-all to that is you have to have a deck that gains life, preferably 3. So, and I'll show you later what those cool cards are to get to gain that life. But if you have a life gain deck and you've got life linking cards in white, plus that white enchantment, which we'll see, or white artifact we'll see later, lets you gain 3 life and draw a card. Having that to make an angel and then putting this book on that angel is almost a way to guarantee you'll never lose the game. Especially late game when they don't have all the removal because they've already used it to try to stay alive or to combat and kill you. This book can be a show-stopping winner. Now, with that said, it could also kill you because it is 3 white, it may get stuck in your hand. Just make sure you build your deck right and make sure you're heavy in white if this is something you want to play. Moving right along, the Loyal Warhound. This bad boy is nothing but a beat stick. So for a white and a colorless, he goes in any 2 colors. So white and any other color, he's a 3/1. He has vigilance. And on your turn 3, if you are not on the play, you let them lay their 3rd land and do whatever they want. On your turn, cast him first, get a land out, tap, then lay your land. It'll set you back a turn as far as maybe playing on curve, but the very next turn you're going to start casting 5-drops, and that's going to put you so far ahead that it's almost unbeatable. Plus, with 3 power and vigilance, he can kill anything. The 1 toughness doesn't matter because most stuff in this deck that would kill stuff is going to kill him anyway, even if he had 2 or 3 toughness. So if he had 3 toughness and he'd have to lose an ability like vigilance or something, I'd rather him have vigilance, have the ability to fetch a land and be a 3/1. If you're playing white, this guy's a powerhouse. Definite include no matter what deck you play with white. So here we have a Teleportation Circle. So it's a white and 3 colorless. It's a rare. At the beginning of your upkeep, or at the beginning of your end step, you exile a creature, an artifact or creature, put it back into play. Very Thassa-like. This is only good in very few decks, especially if they splash white, because a lot of creatures don't have good come into play abilities. One creature it does is that Black Ooze that lets you exile things. You can pull him in and out of combat as long as you remember to eat the creature that he's put in. You can have a permanent removal spell. that just bounces all around the board. Um, the dog we just looked at, you could bring the dog, in and out to try to get you some land. But honestly, this is very thin and narrow. I would not draft this with expectations to get support that's going to make this card really something playable. Because not a lot of things have come into play effects in this set that's going to make this worthwhile. So I'd probably stay away from it. If this is your first chance to pick this in a draft, I'd probably just pick a better uncommon or a good common. Moving on, we have the Dancing Sword. This is one of White's best equipments. Not the best, but one of them. So for a white and 1, you get a +2/+1 to a creature. It equips for 1. It's very cheap. When the creature dies, you get a 2/1 construct with ward 1. That's amazing. It's basically a creature that replaces itself. And that comes in very handy with some of the equipment that White has, which we'll talk about later. So this is definitely a must play in your 40. Guardian of Faith. So this is another good rare that has flash. It has vigilance, and here's a battlefield. You can blink your things. Once again, blinking is not a real big thing you can do. This is a good card with the other white deck. The other white card lets you blink things in and out. But the problem with this is more often than not, it's a 3/2. It's going to die. You won't get to blink your creatures because in this format, it's going to be very rare that you'll just have 3 mana up because you're going to want to go toe for toe with creatures. And if they don't do anything, you just wasted a whole turn where you could have played a threat. So I honestly don't like this in draft or sealed. It does have a place if your deck is really good and synergistic around this. But even on the decks that I played with White, that I had one of these, and I ended up taking it out half the time. So I don't think this is a playable card, at least not in this current draft sealed format. Nadar, he's one of the few reasons that you'd want the Guardian of Faith, but then again, you got to draw the Guardian plus play him. This guy almost always dies the minute he hits the field if they got a removal spell, because he is just too good when he can come into play, venture into the dungeon, and then venture every turn he attacks, which then gives all your creatures a +1/+1. This guy is a beat stick. If you see him in a pack, I would definitely first round pick him. I don't care if I'm not even in these colors. I'm taking this guy because if you're not playing him, he's gonna beat you. So that's my thought on this little fella here. Next we have Oswald Philbender. A white and a colorless for 2/2. I have not found anything in this format that I want to tinker up, especially in sealed and draft. So he's basically a vanilla 2/2, which is fine if that's what you need. But all in all, I wouldn't use him. Most of the artifacts in this format are not overwhelming enough for you to go get and win a game with, or even put you over the top for that matter. And it's so linear with it being an artifact card value equal to 1 plus the sacrifice artifact value. To have that synergy just right, plus enough artifacts to make it work, it's probably not playable, so stay away from it in draft. And seal, you're probably not going to have a chance to use it. So, Flump, whatever that is, giant jellyfish, 0/4 flyer. I'm just going to be quite honest with you guys. This guy is awful. I've played him several times. He is not worth being able to block to let my opponent draw a card. Now, granted, that lets me draw a card too. The only time I've used this card and it been worthwhile is when I happen to get a hideous Tasha's Hideous Laughter or 2 in my blue slot. Because then them drawing just helps me mill them. Plus, it gets me closer to my Hideous Laughter so I can just mill them out. If you're not doing that, this thing is not worthwhile, and I would not play it, because giving your opponent cards when you're already behind just means you're going to lose faster. So, next here we have the Keynight Sentry, or Keynight Sentry, I'm sorry. White and 1 for a 2/1. It gives you hexproof. They can only venture in the dungeon once per turn. This is a solid 2-drop. I wouldn't draft it probably first, second, or third. But if you're in white, you're looking for a good creature, this one's pretty good. The hexproof is relevant to some discard spells and other things. But all in all, it's only a good filler spot. On the off chance someone does venture into the dungeon, they still can once a turn, and more often than not, that's all that they do is once a turn. Giggles, do. So moving right along, Blink Dog, 3 mana for a 1/1 double strike that can teleport for 3, which basically phases it out. This thing is atrocious. I have yet to have this thing be worthwhile, other than just tie up my mana to chump block, which leads me down the path to lose, because then I can't cast anything to try to get back in the game. It's it's just not good. Every time I played it, I've died because it sucks and it's not big enough. Anytime someone's played it against me, I've honestly not gave two dams about them hitting me with it. um, so yeah, just don't play this. This thing's awful. I mean, even if you're in white and it's the only white card in the pack, pick your second color or counter draft somebody else who has a good card. Plate armor, 3 white, or a white and 2, +3/+3 has ward 1, equips for 3. This is a bad card. It's one of the worst equipments that white has because it costs so much to play, so much to equip, when creatures can easily just be killed. I've yet to use this and have it be worthwhile, and anybody who's used it against me has normally died because I normally kill their creature out from under the equip, or so forth and so on. It's just not a good playable card, I think, for an uncommon. It's just a bad artifact. So, Divine Smite. This is a fine removal spell if you're playing against black. It can save your butt in a bad situation, but you can only get your opponent's stuff. So it doesn't even save your stuff. So because of that, I actually would only sideboard this. So if you're drafting this, you better be drafting it for your sideboard after you've picked everything else that is good. Because the number of times that this will be good for you is going to be very slim because of how narrow it is. So don't rely on this as good removal. Monk of the Open Hand. Obviously, if you have the Planeswalker, this guy's a must. He's fine filler space, but more often than not, he's not going to get a +1/+1 counter. So I probably honestly wouldn't play him unless I actually had a filler space spot or the Planeswalker. But even as filler space, I think I'd rather have a card that costs more that does more than this, because this is not a really quick format. And if the format is that quick for who you're playing against, just draft some better creatures that have more abilities that still trade with those quick 1-drops, because once the red deck starts getting first strike on you from Pack Tactics or even the green Pack Tactics deck, you're just going to die because this thing's just going to chump. You can't get it big enough fast enough. So I wouldn't use it. Next, the old white dragon. So this bad boy is a beast. Every time I've had this, I've played it. 6 mana for a 4/4 flyer is fine for draft, but the Cone of Cold ability to tap an opponent's creature down for 2 turns can basically just win you the game. The ability to be like, oh, they just got ahead of me, I'm behind, I have some creatures, but I can't block their flyer or whatever it is that's doing the most damage to me. You lay your white dragon, tap their thing down so it can't swing. Now you get 2 turns of free swinging before they get back in the game, which could very well turn the tables on the race and just win you the game on the spot. So this thing is very powerful for white, and I would definitely play it any chance I get. Rally Maneuver. This is a fine combat trick, but it's only a good combat trick if you have no others. I say that because it costs 3. It gives +2 in first strike, and then +0/+2 in lifelink. It's very situational. Like I said, it's only a good combat trick if you don't have any others. There are better combat tricks in common than this. So I wouldn't draft this and try to stay away from playing it. Ingenious Smith. This is a fine card. It's fine for filler. If you're playing white, you should be grabbing some white artifacts or some artifacts in general, so that this thing can help mill you to them. But make sure those are good artifacts. Don't grab jank artifacts just so you have artifacts. Get good ones, and we'll talk about those later. But any kind of white artifact that's going to give you some value. The cheap artifacts that are colorless, like the Spike Trap and all that stuff, especially the ones especially Spike Trap that has flash, so you can actually grow him on the opponent's turn because it's only 1 counter per turn. This can be a good card if your deck is engineered right, but if you don't have the artifacts for it, I'd stay away from it. Dragon Disciple, so a white and a colorless for a 1/3. If you have a dragon, it can be a 2/4. The dragons have ward. Every time I've had a chance to draft this, I never have. The times I did draft it, even with dragons in my deck, I normally took this out because it just didn't do enough. The dragons have ward 1, but who cares? When you play a dragon for 6 mana, if they have a removal spell, they have an extra mana to kill it with. So I wouldn't even bother. I would stay away from this. I wouldn't use it. Don't draft it. It's not good. Moonblessed Cleric. This thing is a bomb for what it does. I mean, she's a 3/2 for God's sakes for 3 mana. We were using the same ability here. Go get an enchantment, put on top of your deck. We were doing the exact same thing for 3 mana and getting a 1/2 out of it. So she's great filler space just to have a good creature on curve. And if you have an enchantment in your deck, which if you're playing white you should, she's just even that much better. So all around, hands down, an easy draft, even if you don't get your enchantment, because it's just a good card. So Closter Gargoyle, a white and 2 for an 0/4. It ventures to the dungeon when it comes in. When you actually finish the dungeon, it becomes a 3/4 at flying. This thing's a powerhouse at the uncommon level. It gets you a free venture, plus as an 0/4, it blocks really well against small aggro decks. And that first venture into the dungeon can easily be, a scry to get you to something better. So I would highly suggest playing this card in white. I think it's great. It's an artifact creature to boot. It works really well with other stuff. So I definitely would play this card if you're playing white. Portable Hole, great removal spell at uncommon. For 2 or less, it does really well. This is easily, though, a card that needs to be sideboarded out after game 1 in a draft or sealed format. Once you figure out what your opponent's doing, because the odds of finding a mana 2 or less spell in this sealed or draft format is very slim. But it is an online permanent, so you can take like their class, their like a ranger class or a cleric class, which is busted, warlock class or the wizard class. You can steal all those once they've leveled them up to try to get them off the field so they don't hurt you anymore. And I would highly suggest starting it. But if you don't see stuff that's 2 or less in a deck that you're scared of, I'd definitely take this out for sideboarding. All right, so we're in the commons now. Arborea Pegasus, a white and 3 colorless. This is a 2/3 flyer for 4, which is perfectly fine in white for that kind of mana, especially with flying. When it comes into play, target creature gets +1/+1 and flying. I cannot tell you the number of times I've taken that artifact that's a 5/3 that has to attack every turn, laid it first, laid this on the next turn, and punched my opponent for 6 in the face that they can't block. It really swings the damage race, and this thing is just phenomenal. This is a great common. I definitely would draft 2 or 3 of them. It's a really good card. Going 3 or more is probably might be pushing it, but it's a great card to be drafting. I definitely have at least 1 or 2 in your deck because you're going to need them. Priest of Ancient Lore. This thing ought to be a rare in my opinion. 3 mana, white and 2 colors. You get a 2/1, you gain a life, and draw a card. There's white cards in here that get bigger when you gain life. Plus, it's a 2/1 that lets you draw a card. Like, this is not what white does. This should not happen. Like, black, that for 3 mana in black, you get a 2/1 and you lose a life to draw a card. This is just bonkers. This thing is so busted. I'd play 2 or 3 of them, maybe even more if I had them. Just because the ability to lay 2/1s and draw cards get you through your deck so fast to find your land and everything else and your big bombs. This thing is just a powerhouse. You have to play this if you're in white. Steadfast Paladin. Here's the lifelinker I was talking about. This thing's a powerhouse to play. If you have the Angelic Book, or the Book Exalted Deeds, it makes it really easy to gain 3 life probably. So you can get your angels, so you can then make that angel indestructible, or make that angel make it so you can't lose the game. And also 2 mana for 2/2 lifelinker in this format, since it's powered down, is phenomenal. Because there's so many artifacts and stuff that can beef this guy up. Speaking of Book of Exalted Deeds, Potion of Healing. This is a great card as well. Not only does it turn on the Book of Exalted Deeds by making you an angel, for 2 mana you draw a card. If you have a Book of Exalted Deeds, you should be drafting these like crazy. Because even if you don't have the book, you just have these, you just play them every turn and just keep drawing cards till you find the book. And then every turn, just gain 3 life and make a 3/3 angel, and gain 3 life and make a 3/3 angel. This thing is a powerhouse if you have the Book of Exalted Deeds, or the unicorn that gets bigger. And we'll show you that here in a minute. Paladin Shield, white and 2 for flash, O+2, equips for 3. When it enters the battlefield, you attach it to a target creature. This is very bad. There are better combat tricks than this to actually just pump your team. Yes, this one is permanent, but at 2 mana, it's just not worth it. Minimus Containment. This is one of the best removal spells that white has right now. It's a white and 2 for enchant any permanent to make it a treasure. Most of this set cannot deal with an enchantment. And because of that, and most of the enchantment dealing with is in green and white. So because of that, that makes this removal spell just amazing. You have to play it. It's your best removal you're going to have. Just don't waste it and be careful about how you ramp your opponent. But this is a definite keep in any white deck. Delver's Torch. So this is the artifact in white that I'm talking about. A white and 3 colorless. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. It equips for 3. Venture in the dungeon when it attacks. You put this on your 2/2 lifelinker when you have the Book of Exalted Deeds out, and life is just on easy street. Plus, if you can lay it on 2, equip on 3 onto your 1/1, like say you play blue and you have a 1/1 flyer, this thing gets out of hand quick because you just venture in the dungeon, venture in the dungeon, venture in the dungeon, and they have to deal with it to stop you from doing dungeon ventures. This is a powerhouse. I would draft this if you're playing white, no matter what it is you're playing, just because even if you have to suicide a creature in to kill one of their creatures, the venture into the dungeon could very well be worth it. Not to mention, you can equip a token and send it to its death just to keep venturing too. Veteran Dungeoneer, this is something you want to put the torch on. Not only for 4 mana do you get a 3/4 that comes into play and adventures for you, but with the torch on it, it's a 4/5 that's probably not going to get killed and gets to swing in for free. Also play the Planar Ally, 5 mana 3/3 flyer. Is a little overcosted, but the ability to venture into a dungeon is amazing. Not a lot of flyers in the set. Like I mentioned before, flying's a good evasion. Plus, if you have a torch to go on top of this to make it a 4/4, you get to venture into the dungeon twice per swing. Sweet mother of God, stop me. Yeah, it's just amazing. All right, so here we have the +2 mace, white and a colorless. It's a equips for 3, gives +2/+2. This is terrible. I would never draft this because it just sits there and doesn't really do anything other than make your creatures bigger, which is not what you want. The torch is twice as good as this. It's only a +1/+1. It's the same cost to cast, same cost to equip, but venturing in the dungeon is way better than a +1/+1 in my opinion, especially in a sealed and draft format like this. So, torch all day, mace no thank you. The Half Elf Monk, this card's great. It's 4 mana for a 1/4 Vigilance, which is way overcosted, but the ability to Stunning Fist and tap a creature from an opponent is amazing. Not only can you tap at the end step, but this creature you can say on your turn, I'm going to swing because it's got Vigilance. Before blocking, tap your creature, which could actually kill your opponent. So this is a powerhouse. I only play 1, maybe 2, because they're so expensive. They don't do a whole lot. It can be really hard to stay alive if you don't have enough aggro to get them to not kill this and not get killed yourself. But definitely, I would take at least 1 of these, probably 2. You're ambushed on the road. So here's the instant I was talking about that's a lot better than the other one, than the Blink Dog and stuff like that. For 1 white, you can pick a permanent back up or give it +1/+3. Best combat trick you can have. You can make creatures big enough to kill something or survive an attack. Plus, if they do a minimalist encapsulation or whatever that other white spell was we just looked at, that changes it into a token. Or there's blue stuff that enchants, there's black stuff that enchants, or just tries to target it with red removal. Like anything they do, you just pick it up in response. Their spell fizzles. They don't get any special effects out of the spell. Your creature's alive, and all it costs you is 1 white. This card is amazing and a great combat trick. I always play at least 1, maybe 2, depending on what kind of abilities my creatures have, because maybe I want to pick them up and play them again. With that said, Dwarf Champion, a white and 2 for a 3/1. This is just as good as a dog, except it doesn't get you a land. It doesn't have vigilance, but that's fine. Because if you get this and you equip the torch to it, it's now a 4/4. It's probably not getting blocked, and you're probably going to adventure through the dungeon. This thing's a powerhouse common. I would definitely be drafting it. Devoted Paladin. So 5 mana for a 4/4. When it comes in, everything gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance. This seems fine, although I don't think this is the kind of card you need to break through in white. If you don't have anything else to use in a 5-drop slot and you need a 4/4, it seems fine, but to be honest with you, there's cards for 5 or even 6 mana that have way better effects than this that I would sideboard in instead of having this, like maybe in a different color. So here's the Celestial Unicorn I was talking about, the one that gets +1/+1 counters when you gain life. If you have that life gain earlier, like you have that vial that lets you draw cards and gain life, or you have the life linker, this thing gets big quick. A white and 2 for a 3/2 creature, which becomes you make the life linker on 2. If they don't have a response, you make this on 3, you swing in. Now it's a 4/3, then it's a 5/4. This is a definite must kill card, especially if they have a life link shenanigans going on. Yeah, you just got to be careful with this one. Definitely play it. Ranger's Hawk. A lot of people don't like this card. 1 white for 1 flyer is fine, especially if you have a torch, because 2/2 and venturing in the dungeon is amazing. Plus the ability to tap it and venture into the dungeon with another creature on your turn is an amazing upside, especially when the game is stalled out. So definitely use at least 1 of these. Here we hear something on the watch. A white and 2 to basically pump your team or kill an attacking creature. This is one of the best combat tricks white has, if not the best, because it's easy to swing him with 4 or 5 creatures, let them, and they'll be like, oh, I'll go ahead and I'll block this one, I'll take these 2, and I'll be fine. And then all of a sudden you pump the whole team, you kill their creatures, punch them for a bunch, maybe even kill them. And if that's not good enough and you're willing to trade your creature and wait a turn, you can let them swing back at you, and then surprise, your creature's dead. So the best removal spell in white, definitely would make sure to be having a couple of those on you. Dawnbringer Cleric, so a white and 1 for a 1/3. This is probably one of the best cheap drops there is, only because it has, you can gain 2 life once again triggering the unicorn or anything else. And destroy enchantment's a real thing. If they enchant your creatures so they lock them down with something, this as a 1/3 can kill the enchantment, and that's phenomenal. Plus, you might want to exile a card of the graveyard, maybe. Who knows? The Gloomstalker is also phenomenal. Reason for that is obviously if you're going to be scrolling through the dungeon, you definitely want this bad boy because he's going to have double strike before you know it. And when he has double strike, especially with a torch on him, he's a 3/4. You're punching in the face for 6. If you team him up with a black card, Thieves Picks, so he can't be blocked, that's 6 damage every turn they can't do anything about once you get through the dungeon. It becomes an unstoppable force to be reckoned with. And is a really good card, so definitely you want to be using him. Alright, next here we have the enchantments. We have Cleric class. This is probably one of the most overpowered draft or sealed deck cards there is. You get to gain extra life. It only costs for a white. It's easy to get out on turn 1. There's not a lot of stuff you're going to be doing. When you put 3 into it, when you gain life, you get +1/+1 counters on a creature. If you have the lifelink shenanigans going with the lifelinker and the unicorn, and you're drawing stuff with the vials and yada yada yada, and you're just gaining life left and right, it's really easy to start pumping your creatures into absurd levels of nastiness. Not to mention, you go through the dungeon that has opponent losing 1 life, you gain 1 life. That's just whoa. Then also, once they do kill your lifelinker or part of your combo, for 5 mana, you bring it back, you gain life, so now you put you trigger it again, plus you get a creature back from the graveyard. This card is amazing in draft and sealed. If you have it and you're playing white, this better be in your deck, because it is the best thing there is going on in white. Next, we have the Paladin class. So for 1 white, your spells your opponent's cast during your turn cost 1 more. Not a big deal, but the 3 mana after it, where all your creatures get an Anthem effect of +1/+1, is nuts. That is so good. Also, whenever you attack, if you get to 5, until end of turn, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 for each other attacking creature and gains double strike. That will end games, especially if you're playing a white-green build where you have a trampler that you can give +1/+1 to, maybe twice, give them 6/6 with double strike, trample. It's just disgusting. This card is an amazing play, and if you play this and Cleric class, you're gotta. If you don't win, you just had a really bad draw or didn't play enough creatures. That's how that's gonna go. Finally, we'll talk about the land Cave of the Frost Dragons. So this is a great land to play if you're in white. It's only 5 mana is a lot for a 3/4 flyer as a land, as a man land, but it's only 1 white to activate. So it's not terrible. Every land card I'm going to talk about is going to be the bomb for their specific color type because it's a creature. Man lands are just amazing. Yeah, it comes into play tapped if you have 2 or more, but in this format, not going to probably be a really big deal. So definitely a must play if you're in white because it is a creature plus it's a land, and it doesn't get much better than that. All right, guys, and we're at the end now. It's only been about 30 minutes. Thank you for listening to me. We're back at the Book of Exalted Beads as the powerhouse drafter for white. If you see this, you should be all over white. With that said, guys, thanks a lot for your time. I do appreciate it. Stay tuned tomorrow. We'll go through the blue section and go over again, sealed and draft, what's going to be there for you and what should you be looking for during those draft packs when you're trying to make your new color selections. So with all that said, guys, thanks a lot for your time. I do appreciate it. And as always, be kind out there. Hopefully this weekend I'll see you at the game tables.